Hey guys, Bicep here, bringing you another Dragonflight pre-patch video for the Unholy Death Knight. Today we're taking a look at the Boon build in Mythic Plus, or the Quadratic scaling build in Mythic Plus. You might have seen my previous video where I talked about the disease build. This is kind of like the other option you have. This build is centered around the Bursting Source talent. What you do is that you generate an absolute ton of wounds on a lot of targets in AoE. You pop down your Death and Decay and then you burst those wounds with your Scourge Strike, and that deals an absolute ton of AoE damage. You can see here in the first pool, I'm topping over 200k DPS using this build, so it's really bursty. The whole kind of, the core talents here are your Bursting Source talent. Obviously, that means that when you burst wounds, they deal AoE damage. You also have Vile Contagion. It's an excellent way of spreading wounds. Like if you have 6 wounds on your current target, you press Vile Contagion. That goes to then 7 nearby target. That's 42 wounds generated in a single GCD. It's absolutely insane. We also have Dark Transformation in conjunction with Infected Claws. When Dark Transformation is up, it deals AoE damage. Every time it does one of those AoE damage called Sweeping Claws, it has a chance to apply a wound on every target, 30%. This is also a very big generator of wounds in AoE. For instance, this wound here, this pool here, that was only a Dark Transformation pool, and I'm getting lots and lots of wounds and everything, and I'm bursting above 100k, you know. We also have Unholy Assault. This is also a great part of it. It makes it much easier to, it's very good in combination with Vile Contagion. Unholy Assault generates 5 wounds. You press another Festering Strike, you press Vile Contagion, and that's kind of like a very quick burst setup. Finally, I'd say that Epidemic is also another aspect here. Essentially, every time you burst a wound, you get some strength, and it stacks up to 20 stacks. At that point, I think you get 40% extra strength. Let me just quickly double check that. Yeah, so 2% per stack, 20 stacks. Yeah, 40% strength. And the thing is, when you generate that many wounds, you will instantly get a ton of stacks, and that also helps to, you know, increase your burst window significantly. Cool. Right, let's have a look at the whole talent build. So I got it up here. In the spec portion, I feel like there isn't that much we can really change depending on the situation. Right, we have all the core spells we want to pick up. Things like, you know, we want Epidemic, we want Bursting Source, we want Vile Contagion, we want Epidemic and Unholy Assault, we want Ice Infected Claws, you know. You could, no, I don't know. I don't feel like there's much to move around there. Do let me know down in the comments if you feel like there are things we can change around with this build that you feel, you know, would help your DPS overall. For the class specific tree, right, we go all the way down in the power wound weapon. Great cooldown, helps us with the haste to build wounds, helps us with the resources to do so as well. We also pick up like Unholy Ground and Death's Echo. Those are actually very good because they help increase our burst window damage. Death's Echo is also really nice because it means we can like double burst windows on a big pool, which is also a big DPS increase. Grip of Dead, very useful. Means that when you pop down your Death and Decay, even though your tank is kiting the ads away, they will stay in your Death and Decay, right? Which is very important for us because if they move out, it's going to be more difficult for us to cleave and burst all those wounds. Other than that, there's some utility choices, like I picked up AMZ here, but you could allocate that talent and, for instance, improve Death Strike or stuff like Proliferating Shield. A couple options. It's a personal preference there, really. Cool. So when it comes to legendaries, obviously you have Unity, and then you pick up Reanimated Shambler. Reanimated Shambler is another great way of spreading wounds in AoE, right? Every time it triggers, it's going to put a wound on every single target in a pool, and that's going to feed into dealing more big AoE damage, right? See there, having my DPS 65k so far. Obviously it's a gambit, and the tank is pulling around me to do that big DPS, but still it shows you the potential of this build. It's really, really good. When it comes to Covenant, I like to pick up Necrolord here, so we get the Abomination Limb, which gives us even more burst, right? Because Abomination Limb is an incredibly strong burst CD, and it just feeds really well into this build as a whole. All right. When it comes to conduits, pick up Brutal Grasp. It's a great one. You also pick up, I actually pick up Lingering Plague here, because I felt like, you know, I am still running Plaguebringer. My dots are going to be a big part of my damage. I do have the Andrin Ring, and that just means that that's very good value. I'm running AMA, so I only use 2 potency conduits, and those are the ones I want to use. If you were to use 3, I'm not too sure what would actually be good. Eternal Hunger, yes. Obviously that it's a bit bugged currently, so it only works in primary pet, but that would still be a nice DPS increase. Alright, for your trinkets and other gear, so we want Gavel as always. It's very powerful. It adds a ton of DPS overall in a pool, right? We also want to run Decanter is a good trinket, and Scars is also very good. So Scars is 100% the trinket you want, and then Decanter is a good kind of AoE trinket that gives you lots of crits and stats. We also, when we talk about stats, we want to run a lot of Mastery, we want to run a lot of crit in this build, because that really funnels into our AoE damage. This means that also we pick up the crit buff from the affix. Okay, so that was the build itself, right? Every part that makes it so powerful. So let's talk about the rotation, because I feel like this is where it gets a bit complicated. So as I previously mentioned, the whole idea here is to generate and spend as many festering wounds as possible. Every 1.5 minutes, that's going to be very easy for us, because we have our Unholy Sword Vile Contagion combination. So when we have that, what we essentially do is that we do a Festering Strike and a Holy Salt follow into Vile Contagion, and that generates up to 48 wounds, and that's, you know, well enough for any given pool. Still, before we do that, we generally also want to apply our Outbreak or Unholy Blight, depending on the situation, to get our dot up and running, because it deals a lot of damage. Now, in a situation when we don't have Vile Contagion, we will rely on our Dark Transformation to generate the majority of our wounds. As I said, you know, pressing Dark Transformation means that our pet deals AoE damage and applies the wounds in AoE. That's also a very effective way of doing it. When you don't have Dark Transformation and you don't have Vile Contagion, you have to resort to Festering Strike, tab targeting to build all wounds. This is going to be like generally the downtime pools. Obviously, Dark Transformation has a 45 seconds cooldown, so you will have that most of the time. But when you don't, you have to then do this tab targeting. You can also do the tab targeting when you do press Dark Transformation, but if you do Vile Contagion, you really don't need it. Anyway, let's look at an example pool here. So we have Unholy Assault and Vile Contagion. They want to skip. I asked them to pull big here, which was a mistake. We're going to wipe here. But just let's just have a look. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with applying our disease. We're then going to follow up with Festering Strike and Unholy Assault. Let's see. So I'm waiting for them to group up. I do Unholy Assault, Festering Strike. The order doesn't matter too much. I got my Dark Transformation up and running here. I'm going to pop down my Death K, and then I'm going to start my Cleave. Right, you see that's really quick. So what you like from the start of the pool to popping out Death K, it's a really short duration. Furthermore, in this pool, we're going to wipe up for a while, but if it lasts for a long time, right, you can actually pop down a second Death K. Okay? Your Dark Transformation lasts for so long. Obviously, when you press your Unholy Sword Vile Contagion, what will happen is that your all the targets will be capped on wounds, which means that Dark Transformation won't be able to apply anymore, right? But as soon as you get into Death K window and start to burst those wounds, you will free up space for Dark Transformation, and it's going to start building up. And what happens is that you then get your second Death K window, and you're going to be able to burst even more wounds there. If you know there's going to be a long pack, what you can actually do is delay that Dark Transformation. Like if you have Vile Contagion, you have Unholy Assault, you have Dark Transformation ready, what you would do is that you go in, you start with Festering Strike and Unholy Assault Vile Contagion, right? You pop down your Death and Decay window, and then after you've done like 1 or 2 Scourge Strikes, then is when you prep Dark Transformation, right? That means you won't be overcapping on any wounds on any targets, and it kind of sets you up for the Death and Decay window. To take it all in one piece, right? What you do: Outbreak, Fetching Strike, Unholy Assault, Bar Contagion. You dump your Runic Power with Epidemic. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. Pop down your Death and Decay, Scourge Strike once or twice, Dark Transformation, and then keep Scourge Striking. And once that first Death and Decay window's over, you dump your Runic Power, and then you pop down your second Death and Decay, and you do it all again. And that's an insane amount of burst right there. Now, for the Epidemic usage, right? First of all, we only ever use Epidemic if it's like 7 targets plus, so it's only in big pools. If it's lower, Deathcore is going to be better because we do run improved Deathcore, so it does cleave, and that's very powerful. Generally, what you would do is before every single Death and Decay window, you want to dump your Runic Power with Epidemic. We do this because of 2 reasons. 1, Epidemic deals a lot of damage, and we want to use it to deal that damage. And 2, through Runic Corruption, spending that Runic Power will passively generate more runes, which sets you up for the Death and Decay window, right? We want to enter the Death and Decay window with runes ready, so we can burst the runes, right? We don't want to have like 1 rune, pop down Death and Decay, and then you can't press Scourge Strike, right? That's why we dump that Runic Power. Now, it's always a big question here. It's, you know, you will be generating an absolute ton of Runic Power, because every time you burst a wound, it gives you 3 or 6 now with the extra talent, I think. I'm actually not sure if that's a bug, but yeah, it gives you Runic Power every time you spend or burst a wound. This means that you will be generating tons of Runic Power, which you want to spend on Epidemic. Now the question is, when do I prioritize spending it on Epidemic versus bursting my wounds? The general rule of thumb is that you want to avoid capping Runic Power, but you don't want to do it if doing so would mean that you can't burst all the wounds you want to burst, right? So let's see. All right, there's 6 wounds on every target maximum when you pop down your Death and Decay. So that means you want to use 6 Scourge Strikes. That means that you don't want to sit around and press Epidemic so much that you can't use your Scourge Strike and burst your wounds. Simple as that. So you have to take it on a pull by pull basis and kind of figure out, okay, should I spend my Runic Power, right? Avoid overcapping. And maybe I can, burst my wounds in this Death and Decay window and then put down another one to burst them all. Or is the pack going to die too quickly? Do I need to burst them now? Maybe I can't wait. It's that kind of reasoning you need to think about. I can say that there's no hard rule. That means that, okay, always use up your Runic Power. Always avoid overcapping or always spend it on wounds. It depends on the situation. But as I said, at the end of the day, when the pack dies, if you manage to burst all your wounds by that point, then you've used a sufficient amount of Scourge Strikes. And then you can use any other GCD on Epidemic if you want to. Alright? Hope that made sense, because I do also feel like it's not an obvious decision, and it's something that I'm not certain about either. Cool, so that's everything related to dealing AoE damage. Do we die here again? Yeah. Oh, I hate dealing with quaking on this. Everyone just ends up in the same spot and dies. Here's another big pool. I'm going to die here because I do aggro, because I do so much burst, but we'll just take another look. So first of all, we're going to apply our Unholy Light with Dark Transformation. No, sorry, with Unholy Lights. Yeah, Plague with Unholy Light. Pop down cooldowns, Fetching Strike, Unholy Assault, Bar Contagion. Put down our Death and Decay, and then use a ton of burst, and then I'm going to die because I do aggro. I might have wanted to wait a little bit there. The tank did say that I should hold, so he might not have had his cooldowns ready. It's just something to be aware about, that there's also a negative aspect of bursting too high, and it's the fact that you will actually pull aggro. We're now going to do an interesting pull after this, where we do the entire next room, which we're going to wipe on again. So this is by no means a clean kind of run, and obviously we are pulling very big, which means that this build is going to excel a lot. You can see that at the end I'm going to do 43k overall, and that's partly because we do these kind of stupid pulls. So it's not necessarily so that if you run the wound build, that's going to perform better than the disease build. Furthermore, this build has a pretty bad single target, especially when you compare to the disease build. Like, it's all about AoE, and that's obviously negative and a negative aspect, because like someone else is going to have to carry you on the boss fights. All right, we got the setup now. So this is a Dark Transformation only pool. You can see there's still a ton of runes being generated. Right, we're in our Definite window, bursting all those wounds. Unfortunately, what goes wrong is that the tank dies. Here we go, another interesting thing. So we got our Vial Contagion up mid-pack. So what I did there was that I kind of, okay, let's Unholy Assault, Vial Contagion, and then pop down another Definite. Death's Echo has opened up so much space in how we do our burst generally, because previously, right, we had essentially a single Definite window in any given pool, unless it was very long. But at that point, you know, you're like, oh, it's too long, this pool. In this scenario, right, you essentially have two huge burst windows. You have one funneled by Dark Transformation, you have another funneled by Vial Contagion. And it just means that our overall damage is so much higher. I love it. This build feels incredibly satisfying. I really think it's a lot of fun to play, and the good news is that this is going to be like just as powerful when we move into Dragonflight, right? This is not like the disease build, which very much relies on Shadowland specific systems like the Anden Ring. No, this is going to work very well in Dragonflight as well. You saw there, I did some Festering Strike tabbing. Usually there's not much of that going on, maybe you've noticed. The thing is that Dark Transformation has such a short cooldown, and we have Vial Contagion quite often as well, which means that we don't really need to do that much Fester tabbing. Still, I would say if Dark Transformation is the only wound spreading mechanism you have in a pool, you want to do like 1 or 2 Festering Strikes, you know, get some extra wounds up there. But when you have the Vial Contagion, you really don't need to do that. Cool, we're gonna pump down this pack, move on to the next one. You can see I have Vial Contagion and Holy Sword ready. So I will do the normal thing. I did Dark Transformation as well. So Dark Transformation, Blight, Festering Strike, and Holy Sword, Vial Contagion, Definite, and then we pop it down. You can see I overcap on Rune Power here, but I also know that this pack won't live for that long. So I know I can kind of, I need to commit to going into my burst quickly. And that means that I don't have time to press those epidemics. Also, as I said previously, if you have Vial Contagion and Dark Transformation up at the same time, you are most likely going to set off a big second Definite window, right? And if you delay your first one, your second one might come too late. As you see, the pack dies at the end of my second Definite window. If I'd spend like 4 or 5 GCDs pressing Epidemic at the start, I just wouldn't have had time. You can see that I use I play Marilith far too much here because I was pressing Fleshcraft to get the Marilith buff. Obviously I'm playing Aemir, so it doesn't matter for me. Now, we have a boss, right? What we try to do in bosses is use our army. Obviously it's an 8-minute cooldown, so we won't have it up for all of them. But when we do have it up, we want to use it on bosses. Interestingly, it doesn't really synergize with any of our other cooldowns, right? Sure, Abomination Limb, since we have the Legendary, yes, it synergizes, but it doesn't synergize with Unholy Blight, it doesn't synergize with Dark Transformation. So what you do, when you do pop it down, want to try and make use of it when you have an Unholy Assault ready. That's the one cooldown when it synergizes, but other than that, you can just press it whenever. I'm gonna try and do some cheeky spreading on wounds on these ads, but tank is just gonna see if I can deal with them. I feel like generally when you do this boss, the ideal way of doing it is to start in the corner as we did, walk towards the water, and then after a while you kind of circle back and you start at the corner again. I don't think we did that very cleanly. So if we had moved back to the corner now, everything would have gone better. Because as you can see, we've got some fire all over the place, and it's not ideal. But he's trying to do it though, it's just that the boss doesn't want to move. That's a good clear. Now, generally, I've not talked about this, but I am running Plaguebringer. And I think I should be paying more attention to my Plaguebringer debuff. Because, Virulent Plague still deals a lot of damage, even though I don't have Ebon Fever. And I also have the Andrew Ring. Overall, when you look at my damage breakdown, Virulent Plague is a big part of it. So I think one mistake, in this run specifically, and something I can improve on, is to leverage my Plaguebringer better. This obviously means using naked skirt strikes, and then skirt striking at weird times of a pool. But yeah, I'm not sure, because it would mean that when you go into a pool, you would do Unholy Blight skirt strike, and then you would do Festering Strike, Unholy Assault, Vile Contagion. So yeah, I haven't thought about this too much, so this is just something that occurred to me now, that it's probably something I can improve on. Yeah, it does delay your burst by 1 GCD, but I think that's worth it to get 100% dot damage for that first 5 seconds. Alright, cool. We're going to move on to the next pack. We're going to have Dark Transformation and Unholy Blight ready. We're going to get going. I did have a discussion in the Acros Discord previously about desyncing your cooldowns, right? The thing is that if you have Vile Contagion and Holy Assault, using Dark Transformation is a tiny bit of a waste, right? Because you're going to overcap on wounds and targets. So the question then becomes, right, should I maybe sometimes delay my Dark Transformation, so I do Unholy Assault Vile Contagion in one pack and Dark Transformation on the other? I think my general vibe there is that it's not worthwhile to ever delay Dark Transformation one pack to the next, right? The reason is that Dark Transformation has a 45-second cooldown, and if you ever decide to delay it, what happens is that you're going to lose out on casts overall. Oh yeah. Pulling aggro here at 200k DPS. Oh yeah, happens. Oh yeah, I died. Shame. As I said previously, there is an argument to be made about delaying Dark Transformation within the pool. If you know it's going to last for 30-40 seconds, it is worthwhile to delay Dark Transformation until midway through your first FNK, 100%. I would never, though, delay Dark Transformation to the next pool. That would not be worthwhile. One could also discuss whether or not it's actually good to always time Unholy Assault with Vile Contagion, because obviously you can build wounds with Vile Contagion with Festering Strike instead of Unholy Assault. I'm also a bit hesitant about this, specifically because if you want to get up to 6 wounds, that might require you to do 3 Festering Strikes, because it's random if it gets 2 or 3, right? If you're lucky, you get double 3 and you're up at 6. If you're unlucky, too bad, you're going to have to do a third. And if you need to do a third, you're kind of screwed, because you have already spent a rune on Outbreak or Unholy Blight, right? If you do 2 Festering Strikes, that 4 more runes, you will have 1 available. So if you want to do a third Festering Strike, you have to sit and wait for your next rune to become available, and that's going to take a while. I just think if you do it that way, you might end up delaying your burst so much that it's not worthwhile to do so. Sure, you might argue that, oh well, I'm going to burst my wounds at the end anyway. But, you could have otherwise done 2 dedicated windows, right? Now you just did 1. I don't think it's worthwhile. I always think you should time Unholy Assault with Vile Contagion. And, yeah, that's it. We've not talked about too much about Empower Rune Weapon. And I think it's just nice cooldown to have. I would just press it with Abomination Limb and kind of, increase the damage of that 2-minute burst window. It's not a build we kind of need. But the thing is that we can't really pick up anything else which is useful, so got some good haste, which obviously scares well. It's useful to press with army to deal increased damage from that. Yeah, they were all solid. Yeah. So hit a tank, he probably should have hit the boss a little bit before he ran over there. Because now he has some aggro issues. Oh well. We'll end up being in the corner soon anyway. Cool. So this boss, nothing too much we can do. We'll see again that this build doesn't have the best single target. Obviously, we might get army up and running in some 140 from now, but maybe not. So if we don't have anything, we don't do that much single target. if you are running Mythic Plus with a group, you need to kind of be clear that, you know, I will do a ton of AoE, but I won't be the guy that helps to kill the bosses. That's just life. All right, we've got ads coming up. Great for us. We're going to pop our cooldowns here. This is fun, right? So whenever there are ads in a box, we can leverage our Val Contagion to do a ton of damage, which is, yeah, great thing. It's not on a button we would normally press on single target. It's not worthwhile, right? Does nothing. So what you can do is that you use Unholy Sword as you normally do, and whenever there are ads, you just make sure you stack up your Festering Wounds on the boss to to spread them and deal a ton of AoE damage. I just had a thought there, something I haven't discussed yet. You might have noticed that I've never pressed Apocalypse here, and that's because I simply haven't picked up that talent. Right? I don't feel like Apocalypse has a space for this build. It's kind of awkward to use. It's just, you know, it bursts wounds that you would have otherwise bursted in your Death and K window, right? It, you know, deals on single target, which is negligible compared to your overall DPS. It's, you know, costs a GCD, something we would rather otherwise want to spend on something else. And generally, I don't know, it just doesn't fit nicely in the rotation. So you probably noticed when I showed the talents, even though I didn't talk about it, but yeah, I don't recommend picking up Apocalypse, which is quite funny. But yeah, you might say, oh man, we can use the runes, right? But the thing is, like, we spend enough GCDs on Epidemic, we have enough resources overall that we don't need those extra runes. You might have noticed, right? I don't feel like I'm ever in a situation where I feel like, ah, oh, damn it, I don't have enough resources, right? If you don't have enough runes, just press your Epidemic and deal a ton of damage using that, you know? Oh well. This boss is soon going to die, and then we're going to have a look at the damage breakdown. So I'll start at 49k overall before we go to this boss. So that's going to drop a little bit, because you see I'm at 20k. You know, it's okay damage compared to the others, but like if I ran a disease build, I would be doing maybe 25 to 30 instead, so much more. Because then I can pick up Gargle there as well and, you know, do some fun stuff with that. Alright. Well, I hope that wasn't too rambly. I felt like we had a lot to talk about through the entire video, because I feel like there are a lot of things to consider when you're running this build, right? It's not that straightforward. It's a very situational and how you kind of build up your burst window and execute it, which makes it, you know, fun and exciting. That's it. Alright, so I got the damage breakdown up here. As you can see, Bursting Swords is a ton of damage, but also Epidemic, so those are your two primary ones, and both those, you know, scale quadratically, which is why they go that high for this kind of pull pattern. Yeah, leave a comment down below, let me know what you thought about this video. Let me know you're going to try out this build. So yeah, do you think it's fun? Is it exciting? Yeah, let me know your thoughts. All right, upvote, downvote, depending on what you thought about the video. Do consider subscribing if you thought it was a nice and exciting video that you want to see more of. You can always hook me up on the Akos Discord if you have any questions. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.